everyone, and welcome to the Culture Cast. I'm Chris Dashiu, and I'm joined by one witchy bitch, Mr. Eric Niss.
Yeah, baby!
And we are also joined by award-winning writer, Jess Byard.
Hello.
Bringing some credibility to our...
Some moderate credibility.
We've spent years building our credibility.
Credibility.
And if you know what that's from, boy, you watch as much Ghost Adventures as we do.
I did not.
Have you ever seen Ghost Adventures?
I have, here and there. I can't deal with those shows.
Comedic gold.
It's one of those shows that really is just, it's better under the influence. And then
I like the one on BuzzFeed. The BuzzFeed guys too. It's on Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
But that one's pretty fun. That's really the only Ghost Hunter show I can deal with though.
But no Zach Bagans. That's like half the fun.
He's like 99% of the fun.
I mean, yeah, you should take my word for it, because Ghost Adventures not really that great. However, speaking of things that aren't very great, in my opinion, though I know I'm going to butt heads with a certain someone on this podcast, we are kicking off Gialli month with a look at Luca-Guadagnino's... no, I said that wrong.
Guadagnino?
Luca, yeah, whatever the fuck. It's Italian. You know, fucking spaghetti eaters, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, man, you're going to have a hard time this month.
I am 3/4 Italian. No, I am not offended by calling someone a spaghetti eater, because who's offended by that? Everybody loves fucking spaghetti.
That's true. I eat spaghetti, and it's wonderful.
True. It is wonderful.
We're looking at his remake of Dario Argento's Suspiria.
At the beginning, she gave me things. Perfect balance. Perfect sleep. Oh, she wants to get inside of me. I can feel her. Oh, she can see me.
When you dance the dance of another, you make yourself in the image of its creator.
I feel like I'm not even here yet.
The dumpling's incredible.
1, 2, 3.
The way she transmits her work.
You have to decide, what is it you want to be for this company?
There's more in that building than what you can see, Doctor.
You are living with dangerous people. Three mothers, pre-God, pre-devil. Mother Tenebrarum, Mother Lacrimarum, and Mother Suspiriorum. Darkness, tears, and sighs.
You're making some kind of deal with them. I don't know what you're talking about. It's all a mess. The one out there. The one in here. The one that's coming.
All right, like we mentioned, film is directed by Luca Guadagnino, written by David Kajanich. It stars Dakota Johnson, Tilda Swinton playing way too many parts. And those are pretty much the two main people. I mean, there are a couple other people sprinkled in there. But
is Tilda Swinton in Suspiria.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tilda
That's what
Swinton
it should have been.
Suspiria. Tilda Swinton presents Suspiria.
A Tilda Swinton production.
Yeah, and the film is a remake of the original Dario Argento classic with an hour tacked on and a lot less.
It's more of a reimagining, really.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Whatever. We'll go with that.
It's kind of like The Wiz, you know?
Yeah.
Ooh. That's I wouldn't.
Yeah, because everybody knows The Wiz is better than The Wizard of
Not
Oz
like The
anyways.
Wiz.
Ease on Down the Road. Come on, a classic song. Off to See the Wizard. That's some shit, okay? For real. And which one had Michael Jackson? I rest my case. So I am curious, Jess, what did you think of the Suspiria remake?
I loved it, I gotta say, actually.
Fuck me.
Yep.
I'm the only one, of course.
Yep, you were the only one. I was keeping it secret until we started recording, but yes, I thought it was great. I agree that it was a bit long, but other than that, no, I thought I was totally overtaken by it, and I do love the original.
What do you love about the original? I'm curious.
So for me, it's also like the first, Suspiria was my first Italian horror movie. I saw it when I was probably like 17, so it just kind of like really opened a door for me because Italian horror cinema is just bonkers all the time. But for me, it's the nostalgia purposes, but also the score, the lighting, the music. I mean, Jessica Harbour, I enjoy her, and Dario Argento just in general. But
yeah, I was just kind of curious kind of what your thoughts on the original were versus kind of where you're coming from with the remake. So now I'm curious, Eric, what did you think of the remake?
I also loved it. It's 2.5 hours is a lot of movie just like in general. And I think most, like 95% of movies that are 2.5 hours don't need to be 2.5 hours. So you probably could have shaved off 30 minutes of this movie and I wouldn't have missed it, and it would have just been just as good, if not better, because it would have just paced a little bit quicker than it did. But I was never bored during the movie. I never once was like, how far into this am I? I definitely got swept up in the story and cared about the characters, which is definitely something that I cannot say about the original movie. Where this movie, I think, really brings it that the original just didn't have it ever to begin with, was I cared about the characters and knew what was going on and was actually invested into the story of this coven. Where in the original, they just kind of hint at it, and it's this whole thing where there's kind of a big reveal at the end that they sort of jumped the shark on in the remake. We can sort of get into that a little bit more later, but the first movie is beautiful to look at, and the score by Goblin is amazing. And it's groundbreaking in a lot of different ways, but the story is just kind of there. And it's not really about the story, so you can't really fault it for that. But I think this is one of those few movies, and I know, Chris, I've mentioned this to you a couple of days ago, just when we were texting back and forth, that I think Suspiria is actually a very good candidate for getting remade because it's really well known and it's a really well loved movie that's important in a lot of ways, but it also has big glaring problems, mainly that it has this really cool idea for a story that it just did nothing with. It just kind of uses it sort of. And I think this movie really takes the story first and makes it very important and then builds everything else up around it. And it was a really well put together universe. Oh, big sigh.
No, it's and I mean, look, let's not pretend this movie is polarizing. I mean, go look at any of the critics back and forth. Everybody seems to be rather split on it. So the likelihood of one of us not being the one who enjoyed it, if there's three of us on this podcast right now, is really high. So, I am the lone person who was not a huge fan of it. It's overly long. It takes a lot of the stuff that the original did right and does it in a way that seems just to be contrarian for contrarian's sake. The lead actress, I can't fathom why anyone would cast Dakota Johnson in anything. I think she is devoid of charisma as an actress, and that's unfortunate because, I mean, everybody knows 50 Shades of Grey was an American film classic, and that's was her first film that she was in.
Whoa.
Look, I honestly thought I've seen the first two 50 Shades of Grey, unfortunately. I also read the book because I fucking hate myself. But
you loved it, you dirty
I
bastard.
I could have written a better book with my feet in the dark on an airplane with turbulence constantly. The book is terrible. The movie is just as bad. But I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I knew that the movie was not going to be any better than the book. And her performance in that movie is one note. She is completely like stiff as an actress. She has no charisma or any sort of chemistry with the lead actor in that film. And you come to this film, and yeah, she's a Mennonite. That's kind of part of the character, is her being a little stodgy, but not really, because she's also like, you know, it seems to be there's like an underlying sense of repressed sexuality with her being a Mennonite, and her being able to dance is really allowing her to kind of express her sexuality, so much so that she says it's equivalent to having sex with an animal. All right.
So maybe having sex like an animal, like an
animal with an animal.
I want to feel you from the inside type of situation. I was waiting for Nine Inch Nails to start playing, and I was going to be like, this is the perfect situation for that to happen.
But the issue I have ultimately with this movie is it tries to have a message, and I think it tries to have too many messages, and none of them land. And it's trying to be a little heady for its own good. And in doing so, like, and Eric and I talked about this earlier, kind of off podcast, that this movie is similar in the sense to Blade Runner 2049, in that it's kind of reapproaching a well-known film kind of source or material. And in doing so, it kind of goes further with the ideas of the original film than the original film felt comfortable with or wanted to go. However, I think Blade Runner 2049 not only sticks the landing, it fucking nails the landing. Blade Runner 2049, in many respects, is better than the original film. I think this film tries to do way too much. There's a character in this film that's completely and utterly unnecessary, and you spend way too much time with that character. I don't know what the point was. I know what the point was, but by the end of the movie, I think most people were like, we could have done without this, and the film would still be able to stand on its own without this character. But I think ultimately my biggest takeaway from this film is they wanted to really do an introspective piece on, you know, power gone wrong within the matriarchy, abuse of power, guilt, Nazis, fascism. Fuck, there's like 8 million different things they're going for in this film. I don't think any one of them land particularly well. And by the end of the movie, when the big climax happens, you're like, man, I wish the movie had been more like this and less like a drab, it almost could have been a drab autobiography, like a biopic. It was verging on that amount of just like no style. And the director, I believe, in my opinion, he went for that on purpose, and he said that he has, to kind of distance himself from the original, because the original is so stylistic. But at the same time, like, nobody wants to watch a drab fucking movie for 2.5 hours devoid of color completely, except for the dance scenes. Like, I don't want to see that, because it's just not compelling as a moviegoer to watch a movie that has no style as opposed to style out the ass.
That's fair, but but I would argue that the drab look is actually the style because of the setting that we're in. So we're in 1970s, divided Berlin. Everything is very rainy. Everything is very grim and just stodgy outside in the everyday. So I think that devoid, that everything about the first one is, it's the lighting, the style, the everything. But with this one, when we're focusing, I think, much more on the overall, like, feelings of the town, feelings of everyone in Berlin, and at the time was overwhelmingly grim. So I would argue that lack of style actually is the style, because it's trying to, like, force you to feel this just kind of like, this repressed, just constant raining, constant just feeling of everything kind of feels slowed down outside of the dance school. Like, everybody just seems to be kind of on pause outside of the dance school. So I think when we're inside the dance and when we're doing those dance scenes and we're seeing all those things, that's when the real, like, vibrancy comes out, because that's where the real life is coming from.
But
in my opinion,
my contention with that is what's the point of it being so drab if the location really doesn't... The location and the setting of the film, outside of allowing the film to logically be without style, it doesn't impart anything to the film.
I don't know. There's a lot of...
There's a lot of wasted time bringing up the RAF and the Bader Meinhof, but that doesn't add a damn thing to the film. It almost wastes our time.
I do agree that the subplot of because it's a 2.5-hour movie. There's a whole lot of extra going on outside of the witch's coven.
And I do think is an hour of the film.
Yeah, I do think that the fascism aspect of like where the whole doctor comes into play as well was a bit too much there. I don't think we were really I get where they were trying to like go with it as far as like establishing Chloe Grace as Moretz's. She was supposed to maybe be the conduit for Helena Markos, and then that doesn't work out, obviously, so they have to kind of like steer in this direction of being, political riffraff, so that nobody really bats an eye if anything happens to her.
Right.
Which I get that as a way to cover things up, but that really shouldn't be a large part of your movie because, there's really not a whole lot going there.
And that's the thing we keep coming back to, at least in my mind, of Tilda Swinton plays 3 characters in this film. We should have mentioned at the top of this podcast, we're going to talk spoilers because there's no way we can talk about this movie without it.
No, it's,
Yeah.
It's
but
too complicated and too weird to not talk spoilers. Otherwise, we'd just be talking in weird cryptic circles that nobody would understand.
Tilda Swinton as one of the 2 characters, the Helena Markos character, fine. It's practically a cameo in that character.
Right, yeah.
But her as the doctor is quite possibly one of the strangest casting decisions I've ever seen in a film because they're trying to pass her off as a man in old man makeup while also going the extra step of claiming that this is an actor you've never heard of before playing this character as opposed to just saying that is Tilda Swinton in old man makeup. And not only is it distracting every time she's on screen, but her voice in that character it's a woman's voice.
I had no idea, though. I had no idea. They fooled me. I was so confused. I was like, okay, so this is like some dude that they just like aged up for some reason because they couldn't get like a 90-year-old man to like be in this movie, which I was like, okay.
Have you all seen the movie Ghost Stories that came out this year?
Yes.
It reminded me of that with Martin Freeman.
It did.
Yes.
That's a fucking guy in old man makeup.
But
it's so unbelievably distracting that every time she was on screen, I was like, I don't even fucking care what's going on because I can't get over the fact that they thought that this was a passable idea for them.
Now, you said, casting decision, but how do we know? And I'm pretty convinced that this was probably a Tilda decision.
A Tilda Swinton?
A Tilda Swinton. But yeah, I feel like I could easily see Tilda Swinton being like, hey, can we do this? Because I want to. And he's just like, yeah, sure.
Maybe like she read the script and she's like, I know you want me for this part, but I find this character very interesting also, and I want to do both of them. And then
that's when the director says, no. No.
I don't know. If I was directing a movie and Tilda Swinton wanted to be in it, but she wanted to play every single character, I'd be like, okay, Tilda,
I kind of let her. Yeah, I'd be all right with it.
I would have cast Christopher Plummer or some other actor who can actually be believable in that part because, again, when that part of the film is trying to be one of the emotional cores of the film and trying to have an actual emotional message, and it also ties into the main plot of the film so much that the epilogue of the film is Dakota Johnson and that character going back and forth. Again, I can't get over how bad the makeup is. I can't get over how wasted the film feels having given this character an hour just to, have it factor into the climax sort of in a way that feels, again, like a barely fleshed out idea and just kind of an idea, not really a point. And again, Dakota Johnson gets outclassed by Tilda Swinton every time she's on screen, even when Tilda Swinton is in old man makeup.
I mean, Tilda Swinton's going to outclass everybody. Dakota Johnson never had a chance, to be real.
Yeah,
to be fair, but Dakota Johnson's also the emotional center of this film.
Yeah,
I would
kind of.
Entirely.
One of two.
I don't know. Tilda Swinton is also a highly emotionally centered character in this movie. Like, it's...
So there's 3. There's Tilda Swinton as Madame Blanc, Tilda Swinton as old man, who's Benjamin Button, and then...
Benjamin Button.
I mean, that's what it looks like.
It kind of does.
Yeah.
And then Dakota Johnson. So it's Tilda Swinton twice and Dakota Johnson once.
I think that's actually interesting, you mentioning having Christopher Plummer play that character, because that is something that I definitely thought about after the fact. But I also thought that Christopher Plummer has played that German Nazi guilt character a bunch of times.
Forever, yeah.
And I'm just
Max von
that's
Sydow
2 on the nose.
Right?
I was like, oh no.
At least it's on the nose and not distracting in every scene that it's in.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe. Actually, Christopher Plummer might have been wonderful casting, and then maybe they could have done more with that character.
And that's the problem, is that because it is Tilda Swinton playing another character, it almost feels like, why?
But I didn't know.
The storyline just, yeah, I know, but did you feel like that storyline was satisfying in its conclusion?
I mean, it's not as satisfying as it could have been. I
don't know really what the satisfying conclusion would have been.
Yeah, I don't think it's supposed to be satisfying. I think
we got to see Jessica Harper.
Yeah, we got to see
Jessica.
Jessica Harper was trotted out for 5 minutes, and
Jessica Harper got to kiss Tilda Swinton in drag. That's what happened.
I will kiss Tilda Swinton in drag.
Same.
Anytime.
But only if she looks like Helena Markos.
Yeah.
Definitely.
If she's in that outfit and then I'm in drag. 100%.
So, and this is going to circle back to, and this is kind of a side tangent, this is going to circle back to our Halloween 2018 podcast. Speaking of stylistic choices for this film, do you know who was originally slated to direct this film?
Because you
I feel
told
like
me.
I used to, but I don't know.
David Gordon Green.
No, that would be
really
terrible.
glad that didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a while ago when they were talking about this. And then they were like, yeah, Pineapple Express guy, maybe not the best guy to direct a movie that's a horror movie, but give it about 10 years and then you can have your own and you can completely destroy a franchise. That's fine. We'll give you something that's bigger than Suspiria.
Yeah.
But more straightforward horror. So I see where maybe they thought that it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, well, this isn't too hard.
So I would love to see some Danny McBride and David Gordon Green comedy in Suspiria. Maybe some like fart or queef jokes or something.
I was going to say there's hardly any men in this movie to make dick jokes. So there's.
I mean, but there are surprisingly dick jokes in this movie.
That's true, and it was hilarious.
I was definitely slightly confused and slightly aroused and definitely wondering what the fuck was going to happen next.
That actually brings up one of my favorite parts of the movie is the background witches in the coven. So that's something that I thought that was nicely, elaborated on from the first movie, because from the original movie, we kind of get, you get Miss Tanner and Madame Blanc, and that's it. You see everybody else in the background, but they're really not doing a whole lot. And while these characters are mostly in the background and you don't get a lot of like lines and interactions with them, but they're still constantly doing things in the background that like are just like little key things about their characters. The one lady, like the blonde curly haired lady, I don't know. I found her performance mesmerizing for some reason, even though she was just like sliding around in her shoes half the time.
Oh, same. Yeah. No, I mean, those characters felt real. Like it felt like a real place with real people. And all of their
in the background.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like you're like, while the focus was definitely on certain characters, it definitely didn't feel like, oh, these other people aren't the focus, so they don't matter. It felt like everybody mattered and played their part in the system of the coven or of the like dance studio or whatever it was that they were doing. And it felt real. Like it felt natural.
Yeah, I would like to see like. That would have been a great movie if it just focused on like purely the coven. That I would have been really interested in seeing those other witches, because there is the certain point where the one more nervous, timid witch with the giant glasses, for some reason, stabs herself in the neck.
That was so crazy.
I still can't quite figure that one out.
Another plot point that goes completely unexplained yet.
What I reasoned it as is that she was just that the power of, the forthcoming Mother of Sighs was just too much and too powerful for her, that she couldn't handle what was going to happen to Madame Blanc and what was going to happen to everything, that she just kind of like snapped.
Yeah.
Because then again, we don't know anything about what their, personal powers are, how anything like that works as far as witch rules go.
Yeah, let's talk about something that happened in this movie that definitely didn't happen in the first movie, and all of like the telepathic like dialogue that happens, and how they do that in a really interesting way. How there will be a scene where all the witches are like around a table and like talking to each other normally, but then it kind of gets drowned out by this like overdub of like telepathic, like them talking to each other.
Yeah, like they're in that restaurant that they hang out in, and to kind of like disguise themselves, they're having complete conversation normally, but yeah, inside they're talking, about what's happening with the ritual and everything. I thought that was great. I like that. I thought it was great when they did it in both. I thought all of the dinner sequences were really interesting, and very rich and hugely full of energy. Chris.
Well, again,
he doesn't like it. He doesn't like anything about this movie.
That's the thing. I don't dislike this movie entirely. Frankly, there are a lot of things about this movie that I did enjoy. I did enjoy the performances of the cast that weren't Dakota Johnson. I mean, again, Tilda Swinton is fantastic in this film.
Okay, so as a person from Ohio.
Oh, in defense of Ohio. Here we go. An editorial. As a person from Ohio, her devoid personality is very, very accurate to all Mennonite people I have ever met. So it's
again, or they just cast someone who has no personality to begin with.
Bland actress needed,
which is hilarious considering who her parents are.
Oh, so, absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean...
Who's her parents? Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
No, Don Johnson.
Don Johnson.
I wear my sunglasses at night, Don Johnson.
Like Miami Vice Don Johnson.
Miami Vice Don Johnson?
Oh, wait, we're blowing your mind all over this show tonight.
Yeah. Wait a second. Miami Vice Don Johnson's daughter is Dakota Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah, and you know who her mom is? Melanie Griffith.
Don Johnson had sex with Melanie Griffith?
Yeah.
And they made a baby? At least once?
Yeah.
Damn.
And look at how great Don Johnson is in everything he's done recently, and look at Dakota Johnson in everything.
Well, Don Johnson is just a charisma machine. So, like, whether or not he's even acting...
Skip the generation.
Is just like, I don't know. He sucked out all the charisma from all of his individual swimmers. So there's none left when he had children.
But again, I don't dislike most of this film. It's just this film felt like it was spinning its wheels in a lot of the parts, and it's trying to be intentionally vague with its message. And it's like, it's a really heady message that you're not going to get the first or second time you watch it. You need to watch it 3 or 4 times to really fully accept the message. But again,
I don't get that. Like, I don't feel the same way.
But the movie is going for that. I mean, any way you cut it, the movie is trying to be heady and very, like, it's trying to have like a very deep message. It is. I mean, this movie wouldn't be this way if it wasn't. It just wouldn't.
I don't know, man. Sometimes it's style over substance, and
this movie has no style, or like Jess says, it has no style because that's the style of the movie, which I think it's got plenty of style. I completely agree with you that that's what it's going for.
And I did enjoy the cinematography in quite a few instances where it's, playing off reflections and almost a dance itself, where it's like all those different angles and transitions.
Like swooping weird transitions from one angle to like another falls. Weird angle.
Yeah. I thought that was great.
It was almost like they attached a camera to like a door, and then they would like shut the door in the middle of the shot, and you'd get like these weird pans that like all of a sudden you're looking in a different spot, or like a dancer was in one pose and then they'd move to a different pose, and it was like the camera was attached to their hand or something like that. Definitely really interesting maneuvers cinematography-wise.
So y'all don't actually think that this movie was trying to like have something to say?
Sure. Yeah, sure it does. But I don't feel like...
I feel like it goes out of its way to ruin parts of the movie, and like it sacrifices telling a story in some respects for trying to have this conversation about guilt and the male patriarchy suppressing the female matriarchy by not listening to the female matriarchy, and then the female matriarchy not liking the abuse of power, but then insulating itself inside of a coven and abusing its own power by doing the same thing. And so...
Yeah, the way I took that, I mean, that's kind of the crux of all power, is that, it's like these women have been in a coven for God knows how long, how old they are, whatever. So they've seen their fair share of war and violence, most recently, World War II and everything. And so, yeah, they had to, batten down the hatches. But even within their power, in all times of war comes violence and guilt and betray, and that happens within the coven. And I think that evolution between like Madame Blanc wanting to like run the coven in a different way, but her getting, voted down for the same old, is I thought that her relationship, like her evolution and her relationship with Dakota Johnson and their whole, evolution of wanting to make this coven into something better, at least Madame Blanc does, in my opinion. I don't know. I thought that was just a really interesting way to kind of to talk about the patriarchy, and that, yes, that is a very hot button issue right now. But I think that this movie did a good job in showing that, yeah, even devoid of male, patriarchy power itself is dangerous. It doesn't matter who has it. It itself is dangerous, and that this whole eruption within the covenant and, the dividing line that comes down to it is something that they have to reconcile with themselves. And I didn't think that Madame Blanc really saw that coming. I thought that for a while, she, they're above all of it. And then she realized like, oh shit, wait, like maybe what we're doing to these girls to keep this, old line of power going, maybe that's wrong. Maybe we need to do something else.
But at the same time, that's not really what happens though. She goes through with it right up into the point where she's like, something's wrong. Oh, let's stop now. And again, when we're talking about this patriarchy through line of the film puts so much time and effort into the character that Tilda Swinton plays, the doctor. A character that we've already talked about is essentially a time sink in this film. That it doesn't say anything that other films haven't already said. Even the original Suspiria said in some form or fashion, not as overtly, which there is something to be said for not beating the audience over the head with the themes of the film, which I feel like this film attempts to do and sometimes lands it, sometimes doesn't. Again, the epilogue scene being a pretty beating you over the head with what the film's trying to say, but it sinks so much time into a character and storyline that is so not even remotely interesting, and the performance is so bizarre and distracting that it takes away from the overall enjoyment of the film for me, because instead of spending more time with the coven, which are the interesting characters, Tilda Swinton as Madame Blanc is an interesting character. It spends time with this character that feels like an afterthought from another film that ends up not really serving a purpose and ends up getting its conclusion at the end of the film in a way that's just like, and this is how the movie ends? Okay, so she wiped his memory. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to have to respectfully and disrespectfully, because you're an idiot, disagree with you on a lot of points.
Again, they sunk an hour into this movie on a character that is a waste of time.
No, I'm not completely against you in the fact that character, I keep wanting to say his character, but I guess it's Tilda Swinton, so her...
I think she would probably prefer his in that sense.
Right, she
would.
There
you go, his character.
How dare you attack the female patriarchy of playing a male character by calling it a male, Eric? How dare you?
I don't know what to say. I'm sorry, Tilda, if I offended you, because I want you to play every character in my movie. No, I did not find her performance as that male character distracting, because I didn't even know it was her. And this is one of the situations where I'm glad that, like, I didn't know anything about this movie going into it, except
if you had known it was her, you probably would have found it distracting.
Maybe, but, like, the only thing I was like is like, oh, they had this dude and they had to, like, age him up because he was probably, like, in his 50s or 60s and not in his 90s. Yeah.
What the fuck?
I just thought it was like a dude that they were like, he wasn't old enough, so we gotta make him more old.
Yeah.
And I was
there are no old actors in Hollywood. Make this old man look older.
Well, yeah,
Give him these prosthetics that barely move with his face, and they're so heavy that his mouth cannot move.
It was
also give him fake teeth because those fake teeth look hilarious. Everything about the character just like is so cringy because it's everything that everyone always talks about with distracting makeup in movies, like the old man makeup from the 80s and 90s that looks really bad. And now we've gotten to the point where it almost is so convincing, but yet it's not convincing enough.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
convincing.
Like. When you get it, yeah, it's uncanny valley sometimes when you get like people who are like weirdly aged up or down or whatever. Anyways.
The voice was the biggest issue for me. Like that was what I found the most distracting. The makeup, fine, whatever. But yeah, the voice was, and maybe I think that I would agree, Chris, that Eric not knowing it was her probably did help that character.
Oh yeah.
Because I found it distracting myself for a good portion. I didn't find it quite as distracting as Chris, but I did find it a little bit just Because then I started to think, I'm like, well, is this supposed to, maybe this isn't actually a doctor, maybe it is Madame Blanc, like maybe that, but then...
See, that'd have been interesting.
But then, you get through the whole rest of the movie and the epilogue, and it's very clearly not, but...
Are they trying to say something by Tilda Swinton playing a male character? That was the other thing.
I
don't think so.
I don't know for certain that that's not. I just don't know. It's a very calculated choice to put her in the film as the other one of 3 emotional leads, one of 2 that she's playing, and it's a male character. I would like to think not, but at the same time, like, would you put it past the writer of this film to be like, we're going to subvert their expectations by making a female actor play a male character and a female character in the same film, and they're both going to have diverging yet converging at the same time story points?
I don't know. I think it was a Tilda Swinton. I think that's what it was.
I think it was a Tilda Swinton as well.
Well, they need to stop letting Tilda make Swinchins or whatever the fuck you guys are saying. Because this Swinton did not work. So
let's
I
get
really
it
do
trending on Twitter. # Tilda Swinton.
I really honestly think that she was like, can I play this role? And he said, sure. I think that is as nefarious as it gets. I don't think like there's any more subversive like
patriarchy by a female actress playing a male character.
Somebody's getting really defensive about their masculinity tonight, and it's not me.
That's all I've seen in the critical analysis of this movie, is it talking about the male patriarch. I'm like, they covered this in the original Suspiria. We already know this.
Well, and you know what is, I didn't feel that at all. Like at all watching this movie. I didn't feel once that like it was just attacking men for being men and being patriarchal and patronizing to women. Like I didn't feel that, not once. All the men in this movie, which there are 3 that we even like come into contact with, really like have no power, and they go out of their way to show you how little power these men. The 2 police officers that show up after, Man Swinton contacts them. Man Swinton, yeah. There's Lady Swinton and Man Swinton. So
Swinton, what are you?
Swinton.
Okay, so there's Ron. There's Ron. There's Ron Swinson and then Tilda Swinton. So, anyway.
Jesus fucking Christ is what this.
And they're both making
what is this podcast
distinction.
becoming right now?
The fact that I'm trying to explain something. I'm having a hard time doing it because I'm laughing too much.
You sound just like the movie. You're having a hard time explaining what you're trying to explain.
Anyways, so the male parts in this movie are, I mean, this movie goes out of their way to show you how little power and effect that these men have over the women of this coven. Like I was saying, when the 2 police officers show up at the studio or whatever, and they want to take a look around and everything, like they're instantly just like put under a spell, and they're just like, take them into this back room, and they're just like playing with them. Like the guy's got his pants down and his dick is out, and they're just like laughing at his dick and just like making fun of these dudes in this back room, like because of how useless they are and how much they don't matter. Like this movie doesn't beat you over the head with the fact that the male patriarchy is this terrible thing. It just goes out of its way to tell you like that it doesn't matter, because this story isn't about that. Like this story is about these women and the power that they have and the power struggle that they're having in the absence of any sort of patriarchal like issues or whatever. Like,
and don't take what I'm saying the wrong way. I'm saying the male patriarchy thing just because I'm just saying it for comedic effect. I could give a shit, really. Look, I'm not one of those asshole neckbeards that's like, well, I got a female lead in Star Wars. Oh, attack my erection, why don't you? Oh, God, my masculinity feels threatened. Holy shit.
Just because you shaved your neckbeard doesn't mean that I can't attack your erection whenever I want.
I mean, you can attack it with your mouth, but not with your hands.
Oh, no.
But anyways, back to this movie and the irony of a film talking about men abusing women because they have power and women don't, and me having to go see it at the Alamo Drafthouse, which, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should look into it because it's pretty fucked up. The other thing that I walked away from this movie kind of wondering is the director talked about how this was going to be a 2-part film. And
originally or still?
Yeah, originally it was Suspiria Part 1 was the title, the original title. And then he said, I don't want to get ahead of myself. And then interviews after the movie, he's like, we're going to make a prequel and then we're going to make another sequel. It's like, no, we're not. We don't need to. You don't need to make Suspiria the next Halloween. Like, this movie, as much as I'm not a huge fan of this movie, and maybe I'm still kind of decompressing with the film a little bit, I don't think this movie needs a sequel.
No.
I don't either. Or
anything. I don't need to know about Helena Markos' character or what Dakota Johnson's going to go do in the real world. She'll probably just stare at things.
She'll just sigh at things. She's the mother of sighs. Just
She can sigh at me all she wants. I'll be all right with it.
The only thing we'd need a sequel for is if it's more of the climax of the film and less of the rest of the film. Because the climax of this movie is pretty fucking nuts.
It's awesome. And quite honestly, all of the major, horrific events that occur in this horror movie.
Are all
fantastic.
The horror elements are great.
Yeah, that first one where I really like that introduction as well into the certain power is, how power transmits through them to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And when she's doing that dance and that, the girls in the room of mirrors, I'm a huge horror fan. I don't get at all, sick or queasy very easily at all. But I felt that kind of just hot, just rush, just right up my neck watching that whole scene. And I don't know if it was just the intensity of it or what, but I thought it was just fantastically executed.
Except for the whole piss thing, because I could have done without that. And this movie seems to have a side obsession with piss.
No, that's kind of a thing in just horror movies in general that I've seen recently, and it's kind of that
there's a lot of putting
somebody through so much trauma that they completely lose bodily function, control over bodily functions has been. I think they did in Hereditary too, didn't they?
Yeah,
I feel like they did. Yeah.
One of my buddies who went to go see this on Twitter, he's like, "I'm going to see Suspiria," and I had just walked out of it. I was like, "Boy, you're in for an interesting time." Guy walked out during that scene. So he's like, there doesn't need to be no piss in this movie. It's fucking weird. This movie has an odd obsession with piss. I mean, look.
Oh, that's because the witches are taking it to monitor the girls to make sure, that they're not. No, I think it's more so making sure that they're pure, that they're not fucking up on drugs and shit like that because it'll fuck.
And they also have to make those weird. What are those weird picture frames? You don't think that there's any pee involved in making those? That weird.
Oh, yeah.
That weird picture frame that was in the office, the hidden office. That was pretty gross.
It was all mushy and weird.
Yeah, and there's all that hair and stuff around it. Ugh.
But back to the climax of this movie, and not enough. I mean, I would love to talk about pee. Really would. I mean, just nothing.
We know that you would.
Whole podcast of pee.
Mail your pee to 12547 Culture Cast Avenue.
Culture Shock presents the Piss Cast. No, the climax of this movie, best part of this movie, without a doubt. It is, but again, it's also very thematically similar to original Suspiria. Mm-hmm. Almost to a fault, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, so we're recapturing the kind of not the fun, but the tone of the original film, which, I mean, it's a remake. This is a reimagining. Yeah, it's going to do its own thing, but at the same time, I really wanted more of that, and that's selfish of me. But again, I was, expectation walking into a movie called Suspiria. There's going to be some of that, and then it's at the end. But man, it's the best part of this movie, heads and tails, because it's all of a sudden it's kind of a quiet movie. There's some interesting gore and blood, but then all of a sudden it's fuck, there's heads exploding, and there's this fat weird Cenobite looking thing, and then Dakota Johnson rips her neck open.
It did look like Butterball, Lady Butterball.
It really did look like Butterball. Mm-hmm. It really was.
Oh my
God. It's Butterball's wife. That's Mrs. Butterball.
Butterball.
Not exactly the most inspired character design if you're a fan of Hellraiser, but at the same time,
it was still cool.
Yeah. And you get characters' heads exploding and everything else. It's cool, but at the same time, it's it takes 2.5 fucking hours to get to this point. Was the ride worth it?
I think it was.
I think it was as well.
As much as the that final sequence was awesome and totally different than the rest of the movie, and definitely takes it to a place that I was yes, this is awesome. Heads are exploding. People are getting turned into reverse Pez dispensers. All sorts of insane shit is happening. fucking what's her face like rips open her chest and there's like a blood vagina that's like talking out of her like chest hole.
Videodrome.
Definitely like a totally weird thing that was awesome. But the parts of the movie that I liked even better than that were all the dance sequences like leading up to that. So it's like I don't know how much experience you guys have with like dance and that whole thing. And before you ask me, no, I'm not a professional dancer. I just play one on TV. I've had a lot of friends who are like professional dancers and have gone to school for this. And I've gone to a lot of like shows and rehearsals and things like that. And it all felt very real watching it on the screen because I've been in situations like on the sideline, like watching people do these things. And the way that
blowing people's heads up still? Or
yes,
dancing?
Blowing people's heads up. Yeah, for sure. No, dancing. And the way that all of those scenes were set up is like there's all this ritual just in real life that sort of surrounds these productions. You know, everybody's got their warm-up routine and how they stretch and then rehearsing and then the show and everything like that. And they really brought like the ritual of dance and putting on a production into the actual ritual of like this coven and these witches. And so like as we progress like from each of these major like dance sequences throughout the movie, it gets like more and more intense. And yeah, there's usually something else that's like going on that's horrific like during these dance sequences, which like makes it even more intense. But even just those sequences by themselves, like I don't know about you guys, but I could feel like the tension building up, like just through the choreography and the music. That song that they had that was like playing through the production of Valk or whatever was like this weird mesmerizing thing that's in like a slightly off time signature. It's in like 5 instead of 4 or something like that. And it was really like, I don't know, it's very hypnotic and it's very trance-like in its sort of execution, and I think they did an amazing job with those sequences.
I would agree completely. That was like one of the biggest things that I took away. And I'm honestly, I don't know much about dance. It's actually something that I'm like kind of just side interest in for research purposes now, but before this movie came out, now I really want to. But yeah, all of those sequences, I appreciated that they brought the dance aspect of it more up front in this movie versus in the original, where it's just kind of also in the background, where it's more just Susie's just trying to figure out what's going on in that movie. In this movie, that dance, you know, each of those sequences, everyone represents to me like Dakota Johnson becoming, you know, more in control of her body, more in, you know, getting complete agency over herself, over her body, over her life, where she came from this, you know, restricted household, lorded over by her mother, constantly lorded over by these more like intimidating female matriarchal roles in her life. So each of those dance sequences that is pushing her forward into becoming ultimately the mother of size, turns out.
Well, what if she was the mother of size the whole time?
Well, I think she was, but
she was.
I think those dances though like awakened that, like
the case
each one.
That she wasn't.
No,
maybe.
I don't think so. I think it was kind of always she was.
I think you'd be wrong, but yeah, no, and I mean,
she had to let go of her mother at the end of the movie,
right?
So
you have to let the past die, kill it if you have to.
I swear to God.
Like
What?
bitch.
Oh, did I just
Jesus
reference
Christ.
the worst Star Wars movie in order to do that? I think I did. I think I win the gold medal for dumbest
Pretty sure
reference
that's not
of
the
the
worst
day.
Star Wars movie. You forgot that we have to go through the planet core. That's the worst Star Wars movie.
No, that's the best Star Wars movie.
I swear to
you
God,
are mistaken, sir.
You're
the
a
Gungans
liar,
are my
sir.
spirit animals.
Let's not forget that this man said he liked this movie, and he's talking about how he loves Gungans. Let's see whose opinion reigns supreme.
I have backup on this podcast. No, but
You could make the case that she is not up until the end because I don't know. I mean, it's either way. Does it really affect the outcome of the film? I mean, you could if you viewed it either way, it does kind of present some interesting, kind of different takes on what happens in the film.
But I think that in theory you could be right, but I think you're wrong.
Yeah,
So-
I think she was always the mother of size. I think she just had to be like awoken, and that's
there's
all
that
those dances
sequence.
She had to be woke. This is a
Pretty
movie
much,
about
yeah.
being woke.
Stay woke.
Stay woke, my dancing sisters. You know what I'm saying?
There's that sequence when at the very end when she's asked to like you must what did she say? Something like you must like Jesus Christ,
reject your mother and claim me as your mother, and then her mother
I am
is
the only
played by
mother.
an actress who plays death as well. By the way,
that makes sense. But then like her mother says something like my daughter, like she is my sin. Remember? Like there's that weird sequence where it cuts back to like her childhood and like all the like weird fucked up things. Like I think it just means that like her mom knew that something was off about her daughter from like day one. But it's one of those things that like 999 million times out of, a billion or whatever, like your mom's wrong and your mom's just being a bitch and she doesn't understand you. But the one time that it happens, like you actually are like the descendant of, some ancient witch or like the spawn of Satan or something. And this is one of those
spawn
times.
of Satan. It's very clear that Mother Suspiriorum is not an evil character.
No, she's
at all.
not.
And that's like, I think that's maybe my favorite part of this movie is that in the original film, it's left ambiguous as to they're obviously trying to do the same thing in the original. They're trying to turn Jessica Harper into Mother Suspirorium. What the fuck ever. Mother of Sighs. You guys were doing the right one by not trying to say it. In this movie, I like that twist, and I think that it's interesting that now it's like she's not an evil character. She's trying to run the coven in a different way.
Yeah, she's like a benevolent god.
Yeah. I think that's really successful and interesting compared to in the original film, leaving a little bit of ambiguity. However, again, I want to go back to the fact that explaining everything for the audience like they're a bunch of dum-dums and really giving a ton of exposition, still not a huge fan of that.
I mean, this is a long movie. Like, people probably forgot what was going on the first 30 minutes, like, after the, second hour happened. So, no, something you were saying about power and how Dakota Johnson's character, as the movie progresses and as you see these dance sequences with her, she seems to take more and more power and becomes like more and more of an empowered woman instead of like this meek little, just like Mennonite country girl from Ohio or whatever. And there's a really good scene where she even like tells Madame Blanc, like, no, it shouldn't be like this. The dance should be like this, right? Like, shouldn't it be this way? Isn't it obvious? And that, I feel like in the movie, now looking back, knowing how it ends, is like a turning point where her old self is starting to really fade away, and it's really becoming she's really becoming the Mother of Sighs and not really whatever her character's name was, Susie
Bannion.
Yeah, she's sort of losing her Susie-ness and gaining her
which
size-ness.
Is clearly an allegory to Steve Bannon. Let's not forget very clearly.
I gotta go. The headphones are coming off.
Clearly supposed to be Steve Bannon again, male patriarchy. Going after the patriarchy.
My co-host is a troll.
Fuck. Again, I think that talking about this movie is really the best thing that you can do with this movie because it is a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
We all can agree on that, right? Like,
yes.
There's a lot going on in this movie.
We could talk about this movie for 2.5 hours.
And still not manage to cover everything. I mean, I had to go like 45 minutes away to see it because it didn't come anywhere near where I live.
So did I.
Oh, no.
So, I know. So it'll be next week. It's going to come to more theaters. I don't live in the country. I am not Mennonite.
Was it hard to do it in a covered wagon?
It did. It took days. I mean, we brought the whole family came, had to hitch up all the horses. It was ridiculous.
Them died of dysentery.
Bring your provisions.
Yeah.
So you had to travel to go see this movie like I did.
I did, yes.
Sorry that I live in Los Angeles and I went 10 minutes to go and see it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
When
much.
you went and saw it, were there a lot of people in the theater?
There were a fair amount of people at the theater, actually, more than I was expecting for like a Sunday at 3:15. Like I was expecting maybe like 10 people, but there were probably like 25, 30 people in that theater.
Did you have to go to like an indie theater to see it?
No, I went to a Cinemark Valley View. It's like an XD theater. It's just for some reasons, it's the only one that when the limited release movies come out, if you're going to get it, that's probably where you're going to get it at around here. We have a local indie theater, but they usually get things like a couple weeks after they come out. But yeah, so I went there, and this was one of, it's a Cinemark with the reclining seats and everything, which was great because that, my feet up, just the wall that goes in front of you, because you have to stretch out so much. You can't see anybody below you, which is great. So if anybody pulls out their phone, it's you're completely void from seeing any of that, which was great because it was just focused completely on the screen.
Well, I had to, and this is, jeez. Eric already knows.
You won't stop talking about it. I wish you would just quit complaining. It makes me so mad.
I don't like that I had to go see this fucking movie at the Alamo Drafthouse.
I've never been to one.
Like it. Well, don't put it on your list of places to go for a number of reasons. Namely, again, like I said, pretty funny going and seeing a movie about empowered women at a movie theater whose company constantly abuses their wait staff by letting customers sexually assault them. So,
awesome.
Again, great. High five, everybody at the Alamo Drafthouse. Tim League hiring Devin Faraci back was great last year. Really
I remember that whole thing.
Another kiss of shit on top of a delicious shit sundae. So having to go see this movie there is just, it's a little bit of irony, but no reclining seats at the Alamo Drafthouse. But my theater was completely full.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, where do you? So you live in Austin,
Lincoln, Nebraska.
Nebraska. I thought you lived in Texas for some reason.
I had to go to Omaha to see it.
Wow.
Yeah.
He had to drive to Austin.
Yeah, I had to drive to Austin to see it. No, we have an Alamo Drafthouse in Omaha, so I had to go there. It was the only place within 300 miles showing.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Unlike Eric, which was probably being shown at 5 theaters within 10 minutes of his house.
Just which direction do I want to walk? There it is.
There was a lot. I had my pick of the litter when I went and saw it, and I went and saw it, and there was 5 people in my theater, but it was at
I went and saw it on a weekday.
2:30 in the afternoon, on a Monday. So yeah.
And honestly, to be perfectly honest, I'm kind of surprised this movie got released in theaters.
I'm not surprised it got a limited release that way. I'm surprised that it's actually going to get more of a wider release here coming in the next week.
I feel like what's going to happen is people are going to go see it thinking it's one thing and then walk out and be like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Yeah, that seemed to be the general consensus of my theater. There were people in there who you could just, tell we're fans of the original there for that. But then, people sitting, a row behind us, you could just tell that they were not at all getting what was happening. There was, a lot of weird, nervous laughter in places that I was just what are you even laughing at right now?
And I went and saw it with my wife, and she was like, this is a really fucking bad movie when we left. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I dragged you an hour out of your way to go watch this almost 3-hour movie. I'm so sorry.
My husband was a bit let down by it.
Well, and, that's the thing is, and maybe this is part of it, is I was let down that it was just so, it's so different and so weird and so stylistically out there.
I went in going on, okay, this is going to just it's a completely different movie, which in my opinion, I think that it cleared up, like you said at the beginning of this. Dario Argento is great. He's got great style. I love most of his movies before 1990. And
I'm a post-2000 Argento fan myself.
Dracula? Ugh.
I'm more of a fan of Asia Argento.
Well, fair.
All right, I'm out of here.
Eric,
so are a lot of 14-year-old boys.
Coming hot and fresh.
Many 14-year-old boys are a fan of Asia Argento. Let's just put it that way.
So we've all heard.
Yes, but for me, Dario. He's not a great writer, and a lot of his plots just kind of stop in the middle of the movie to favor style and crazy shit on screen, which is great. I love that too. But for this movie, I thought, it's I know more why the Coven is drawn to Susie. I know more why the Coven is doing what they're doing. I'm aware that, I thought they were just a lot more upfront with the whole witch aspect of it. Whereas in the first one, where it's kind of just always in the shadows, where it's just, goblins yelling witch at you in whispers every once in a while. And you're like, okay, I guess. I haven't really seen too much evidence of that yet, but this one, I thought it kind of just cleared that up. I thought it added a little bit more to that, made it more of a complete story.
Let me put it this way, and this is kind of, because we're almost at the end of the year now, and this movie, I think, is going to be, for Eric at least, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, Eric, this is going to be in contention for one of your favorite movies this year, right?
No.
Really? That's
No.
kind of surprising. I'm not super surprised, but at the same time, a little surprised. If I wanted to watch a movie with strong women that has a message, that is a good movie, that also is an adaptation of something that does not follow the source material at all, I think you know where I'm going with this, Eric, I would just watch Annihilation.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, there's a couple of movies.
This is the best comparison that I can compare to this year. This movie and Annihilation, similar in themes, kind of, but it's about strong women fighting the kind of the oppressive nature of, whatever, be it Annihilation, you've got one idea, this movie, you've got another idea of what the oppressive nature is of what's going on in their surroundings. But I'd much rather just watch Annihilation, because not only is it stylistically interesting, but the performances are better. And it has something to say that I think by the end of the film, you're like, yeah, I can kind of see where the film's going. And while the ending of Annihilation, I think, is probably the worst part about it, because it feels like it's from a different film.
Yeah,
this film's ending is kind of like a wet fart. It's like, okay, great. I mean, that's it. Like, okay, you had this really cool climax, and then it's this bedside chat with a character who is distracting if you know who they are.
But totally fine if you don't.
Yeah, but if you don't know, you're perfectly fine. But that's the thing. That was the other thing I was kind of thinking in my head while watching Suspiria. It's like, this is just like Annihilation, but just an hour longer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it tells a different story. It's you can make the comparisons. It's all female cast. It's, you're talking about, female empowerment and
guilt and loss.
Yeah, and guilt and loss and stuff like that. But the lens is so different. I don't know. I wouldn't, I don't know. For me, it's a tough, direct comparison, because they're so different and coming at things from such a different angle. I'll be the first to say that Annihilation is, still in the running for my favorite movie of the year. It's probably my favorite movie of the year. It's probably one of my favorite movies in the last,
Did that come out this
forever?
year?
January.
It came out earlier this year. And let's not forget, not only did it come out this year, it was also summarily dumped on Netflix the same, a week after it came out. So.
Yeah.
But,
true.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this movie will definitely be in, maybe my top 10 or possibly even top 5 favorite movies of the year, but it's definitely not in the running for number 1. And I think runtime probably has a lot to do with that. And now that I know that it was, Tilda Swinton, Tilda Swinton?
Man, you're just getting closer and closer to Swansons. You know that,
now
right?
that I know it was Ron Swanson. No, now that I know that it was Tilda Swinton, there is a little bit of Johnny Knoxville in Bad Grandpa,
oh, that's a bad comparison, because now I'm going to think that that's what she looks like.
Right?
She looks like Spike Jones in the original Jackass movies, where they're pretending to be old people in the wheelchairs, flying down the street.
That's pretty.
I was Lon Chaney's lover. Well, go love him then.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that whole plot of the movie really doesn't need to be in the movie. I understand why that it's in the movie. Just like I understand, I actually really like the setting that it's in Germany at the time that it's in Germany. Berlin is divided. The coven is divided. There's so many mirrors in the setting to mirrors in the plot, and then just mirrors in general in the movie. Everything is a mirror. There's so many mirrors. This movie should have been called Mirrors, the movie, starring Tilda Swinton as
Mother of Mirrors.
Bron Swinson.
Mirror Spiria, maybe?
Terror Swinsoner.
Suspiria.
Swinspiria.
Oh, that's a good one.
Making shit up here.
Swinspiria, dude.
Swinspiria, Deswinchins.
Oh my God. Hashtag Swinspiria. Hashtag Deswinchins.
What about just Tilda Swinton, the movie, featuring a bunch of fucks who aren't named Tilda Swinton and Tilda Swinton?
And 16 posters of David Bowie, which I was not upset about. Every one of their dorms was just plastered with David Bowie.
Hey,
Did I mention that Tilda Swinton is in this movie?
I feel like
Did she play David Bowie too in the David Bowie poster?
She did in that one video.
Oh God, Tilda Swinton is everywhere, and I'm okay with it. Okay, I don't know. We've already gone on for an hour, and we could go on easily for another hour about this movie.
Yeah, but we'd just be cracking jokes about Swanson, whatever the fuck you guys were saying.
Deswinchen.
Yeah.
Deswinchen 2018.
I think what this movie shows more than anything else is that Tilda Swinton effectively outclasses anyone that she's in a movie.
Yes, I agree. But I think that kind of would be in most movies that she'd be in with anybody. But I put up against Dakota Johnson, who the character itself is supposed to be meek. She is, I do agree that she's the weakest, actor in this movie. But given the people that she's put up against, she's put up against.
Like Chloe Grace Moretz, who does so little.
She does. Which, I mean, that's fair because the character completely that she's supposed to do.
I agree with Eric. She is completely wasted because I love Chloe Grace Moretz. I think she's a great actress.
I think that they just should have used a no-name actress for that role because of what. I mean, I get that character's in the original. She's only in it for a minute. She's, the whole idea is that spawns Susie Bannion and them Sarah looking into things. I get that, but I think putting that like a actress that we all know pretty well in that role was just kind of, for me, a little distracting. I think it would have played a lot better had it been a more no-name actress.
Or they should have focused maybe the first half of the movie on her character.
Or that.
And then so you build the character up, then the character disappears, and then you don't have the horrible fucking character of Tilda Swinton playing a man in Benjamin Button makeup. And in doing so, you have a character who is played by a fantastic actress that we've seen in a bunch of stuff that's a great actress, giving her time to really establish her character, which, by the way, would be unlike the original film, because the original film, similarly to this one, doesn't really give that character a lot to do, but it also doesn't cast a major known actress in that role. And in doing that, you set up this idea of why the Coven is doing what they're doing, gives up probably a little bit more backstory, maybe a little bit more kind of motivation for these characters to kind of really be pressing on and rushing with the Susie Bannion character, which comes into play towards the end of the film. And again, you're not wasting Chloe Grace Moretz, or maybe just swap the parts, have Chloe Grace Moretz play Susie Bannion and have Dakota Johnson play the character that's off screen for most of the movie, because let's be honest, that probably would have been a better choice anyways.
Man, I thought for sure you were going to say have Chloe Grace Moretz play the old guy. And I was about to be like, that is the most inspired casting I've ever heard of in my life. Let's cast this like 20-year-old American like girl actress to play a 90-year-old German fucking dude. Oh, that would be amazing.
But I mean, that awesome. In my mind, that would have been a just as suitable option.
I would agree with you in there. I do think that they could have, if they even, because I don't hate the subplot with the Doctor so much. I do think that it could have been less, but I don't think it completely needs to be omitted. So I think that they like split the time between developing, Chloe's character instead of doing so much with the Doctor. I think that would have made it a bit more well-rounded.
Yeah, I mean, the Doctor, if we had taken the Doctor out a little bit and not had it played by Tilda Swinton, maybe it would have been a little bit more impactful. But every other scene being the Doctor, I'm him just like fucking eating or reading a book. Like, oh, okay, great. There's definitely not a more interesting plot going on here, folks.
God, I have like a page full of notes, but I think
Are you serious? Don't lie to me.
I do, yeah.
You have a page of notes?
Yeah, like I got home and I was like, I got to put all these ideas that I have in my head down, and they're all like, none of these notes make sense. They're all like half sentences.
And you were just like, a lot of your notes were just, who is that actor?
Yeah,
Who's that amazing old man?
Who's that amazing old man? He was great.
I still can't believe you didn't realize who that was.
I didn't. You know what? And this is why I don't look things up about movies ahead of time or watch too many trailers, because I like being surprised.
Well, if you'd watched a trailer, it didn't tell you in the trailer.
Well, yeah, but, still.
They didn't even tell you in the credits.
Speaking of trailer, this is a complete tangent, but I got to air my grievances out somewhere. So they showed a new trailer for Glass, and it's like an even more revealing trailer than like the first.
Have you watched trailers, sir, in the last 10 years?
I was so pissed.
I was
we're essentially going to get to the point where it's just you're watching a double feature because you're watching the whole fucking movie before you watch your movie.
But then but first you gotta watch the 15-second teaser for the trailer you're about to watch.
They only don't do that in theaters though, do they?
No, not in theaters, just on
That's like on TV,
yeah,
right?
on TV
YouTube?
and online, yeah.
Yeah. Why do they do that? I know why they do that, but I thought that they do that. So they like on YouTube, they have that before the actual trailer. And I thought that was just so they could put it before a YouTube video.
No, like some of them, like it's just built in there. Like that's,
right, I know.
That is
but like,
just...
Right, because normally I thought they made it so short so you couldn't skip it at the beginning of a YouTube video. But then it's like now they're tacking it on to their own trailer. It's like, you do know we're watching the trailer.
Like I purposely came here for this reason, but thanks. I guess.
If you want me to watch the trailer before the trailer, cool. But Glass. Yeah, just give me a fucking trailer because I don't need to see the movie at this point, right?
Yep. I watch about 30 seconds of trailers anymore. I turn it on for about 30 seconds, get the gist, and go, okay, good. That's it. I don't need to watch more.
Yeah. No, I'm officially no longer showing up to films on time. I'm going to show up 20 minutes late every time so that I try and miss as many of the stupid fucking trailers as possible.
If you do that at the Alamo Drafthouse, you will not be let in.
That's why I live in Los Angeles, where they say, suck it, Alamo Drafthouse.
As we all
And you go to the New Bev.
And I just go to the New Bev or just the regular-ass AMC in Burbank that has all the good movies still.
There you go.
Or if you live in Lincoln, you only have one movie theater chain that you can go to because they monopolize the city. So, that too. So, I don't know, Jess, if they have Markos theaters in Ohio.
They do not.
What a bummer.
We got Regal and Cinemark. That's about it.
We had Cinemark back in Texas, but now we have one movie theater chain, and that's it, because at one point this city said, multiplexes outside of downtown, no, we need people to come downtown to watch movies. Mm-hmm. And that rule has stuck since 1980-something.
Wow.
Yeah, for real. Well, they voted on it last...
Let's be real. How big is Lincoln, Nebraska? Like, downtown can't be that far.
250,000 people? It's pretty big.
No, that's nothing.
But, yeah, well, fuck you. You live in L.A. In the 80s, in Lincoln, they wanted to revitalize downtown, and so one of the things that they did was make a rule that the only multiplex in the city could be downtown because they expected, hey, people are going to go downtown to watch a movie, they'll spend money at restaurants or shopping or go get a drink at a bar after, and because that's the case, no companies like AMC, Cinemark, theoretically Alamo Drafthouse, any multiplex company that does multiplexes couldn't come into Lincoln and build a movie theater. Because it's a rule in Lincoln, you can't build a multiplex. And so what ended up happening is one movie theater chain bought all the little movie theaters in town, Markos Theaters. And so now we only have Markos. And last year they voted on this again. Greg Markos, the owner of the company, showed up in town and made sure that it went through again because, what a surprise, they're doing a multi-million-dollar renovation on their theater downtown. So, yeah, it's really fucked up because the movie theaters where I live on this side of town, the south side of town, they can only show 4 or 5 movies. And the likelihood of them showing something like Suspiria is low because they'd rather show Hotel Transylvania 3 or whatever shitty fucking movie they can shill to people here because unfortunately nobody would watch a movie like Suspiria anyways because because you've got 5 screens, why sacrifice one for a movie that's not
gonna make the money you want,
yeah, make the money. To show Halloween on 2 screens or show Suspiria on one of those, which one's gonna make money?
Right.
So it's really fucked up because if you want to go see anything that's not kind of mainstream, you got to go either to Omaha or go to downtown Lincoln, which presents its own problems because there's never fucking parking downtown and you have to pay to park to go see a movie. There's no parking garage to park in because of course there's not. So complete and utter tangent, but you guys are lucky that you have movie theaters near you that show more than 5 movies is what I'm saying. Jess, what would you give Suspiria out of 5?
I give it a solid 4 out of 5.
What about you, Eric?
I too would give this movie a solid 4 out of 5.
And I give it a 2 out of 5.
Jeremy hates it.
No, I don't. Trust me, if I hated it, it would be like a 0.5 or a 0. Again, it's not without its merits. It's not without its merits. There's just a lot of stuff that is just kind of, don't know. Maybe I'll watch. I mean, I'm not going to not watch it again. I'll watch it again. I'll give it a second chance. Sure, why not? Maybe it's one of those movies that gets better with repeat viewings. There are movies like that.
Oh, there are plenty of movies like that.
Yeah, there are. Fuck you, Eric. Oh my God.
I don't know. Never had that experience.
Oh, I swear.
They only get worse the more you watch them.
So let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast.
Not since Dracula stalked the earth has the world known so terrifying a day or night?
It is I who renounce you, and in the name of Satan, I place a curse upon you.
Black Sunday is like no motion picture you've ever seen. There are those who believe and those who do not. But both must know the suspense, the shock of meeting the living dead and of bringing the dead to life.
Look into my eyes. Embrace me. You will die, but I can bring you pleasures mortals cannot know.
Black Sunday, the most terrifying motion picture you'll ever see. Satan, wearing strange robes and fighting with all the furies of Hades, arouses the countryside to a frenzy of black terror.
That's right. On the next Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about Mario Bava's Black Sunday. Until then, where can people find you, Jess?
You can find me on Twitter at writer Jess Byard. You can find me on Instagram, same handle. And I'm on Facebook, and if you're not really creepy, I'll probably accept your friend request.
And I'm happy to announce that Eric is back on Twitter, and you can follow him at Tycho Magnetics before he tries to lie and say he's not on Twitter anymore.
Wow.
Well, I'm really glad that you stole my thunder for my big announcement.
I honest to God thought you were going to be like, I'm
an
not
asshole.
on Twitter.
Yes, it's true. I'm back and badder than ever. I tweet sometimes. Yes, you can follow me. I tweet stuff not about politics. There will be no political tweets from Eric. Ever. It's strictly dick jokes and horror movie stuff.
There are enough people tweeting political stuff. Come on.
Yeah.
Guys, Elvira's getting in on it, okay?
If one more person tells me that I need to fucking vote tomorrow after I already voted, I'm going to be so mad.
Listen, okay, Elvira said you gotta vote Democrat, and everybody knows that Cassandra Peterson is the voice of a generation. So if you don't vote Democrat because Cassandra Peterson says so, well,
Then
you probably can make up your own mind.
Couldn't even tell you who Cassandra Peterson is.
Elvira.
Actual Elvira.
The actual
like,
ones.
Yeah.
The real
vote Democrat. It's like, what the fuck?
Elvira, you're awesome, and I respect your right to be able to tell people to do whatever the fuck that you want to tell people to do, but don't tell me what the fuck to do.
Well, speaking of Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at Culture Stash, where you will not see me tweet a goddamn political thing because it's like tweeting into a vacuum. And you can follow the podcast at CultureCast. Head on over to culturecast.com where you can find more about this episode. Find links over to iTunes where you can rate and review the show, and to Patreon if you want to give us money. If not, cool, that's fine.
No, it's not cool. Give us your money, damn it.
Give us money, come on. I'm not. That's fucking desperate. Come on. But seriously, if you don't give us money, I mean, we'll still keep doing this.
I'll have to get a real job, and then nobody wants that.
Donors get access to unreleased episodes, DVDs, and the chance to guest co-host a Culture Cast.
You can have my job for a day.
Boy, look at how many. Look, the phone lights are lighting up.
You get all of those callers waiting to be hosts.
So many.
Yeah.
I'm getting tweeted so much right now.
Yeah. Big thanks as always to Eric for your intro outro music that you put together. It suits the podcast well.
You're welcome.
Question mark. And to Jess for joining us for this lively and heated debate about a movie that came out this year.
Absolutely.
About a movie that came out this year.
It's true. It did come out. It came out.
Well, hopefully I'll be back for a movie that comes out on another year.
Ooh, that's true. And make sure to check out the next Culture Cast.